G'day everyone, my name's Chris Nitzo. This is an Oz Cyclone Chasers first state update for Western Australia. This is the first time we've tried this for state by state. And look, it will form the basis of a subscription service next year. Although you're not actually purchasing the videos themselves, the videos are always going to be free for your consumption. But these videos will only be available to people who have purchased our package of a keyring, a USB, and a bumper sticker to show your support for Oz Cyclone Chasers next season. Now, what these state-by-state videos will be is they'll be issued 3 times a week between November to April during quiet periods. So during when there's not too much activity around, no cyclones around, just the standard thunderstorm activity, we'll be issuing them on Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays. They are going to be issued every day during active cyclone periods from November to April. So when there's a cyclone around WA or going to affect WA, and that includes Christmas Island and Cocos Island, those updates will be issued every day during those cyclone periods. During the dry season, there's not too much reason for us to be updating you every day and clogging your news feeds and all sorts of things. So we're going to issue once a week from July 1 until November 1. And then we'll go into the 3 times a week until there's a cyclone. They're normally going to go for about 5 to 20 minutes, 5 minutes on down days, like at the moment. It's pretty down at the moment, so there's no real reason for an update to go too long. But they can go up to 20, maybe even 25 minutes. Sometimes WA gets impacted by 2 cyclones at the same time. Not often, but sometimes it happens, and we need to go into detail on both systems. Going to be issued once a week on Fridays, not this Friday, but on Fridays we start to look ahead for 3 or 4 weeks, up to just over a month, and looking at what the cyclone potential is for the region. Why do we do it? Well, because it allows a more localized focus. It allows for better decision making on your behalf, and allows us to target specific prone areas of severe weather, which we can't do in an overall national update. Compared to our short updates that are available free on Facebook and on our YouTube channel, there is more depth and focus to these ones. There's more probability-based guidance. So if one of the models are suggesting 50 millimeters, and on the public one, that's the way we go, that model could be completely off compared to all the other models around it. So the public one could be way off, and this subscription-based one that you're getting is more likely to be more correct. So it allows you to make decisions based on how likely is it that something will happen. And I guess the big thing there is also we go into the whys here, as opposed to the 4 to 8 minute updates that are available nationally. They don't go into why something happens. There is also, I guess, the big thing that I'm looking forward to is the question and answer period. So once I post these updates, and I'll let you know sort of 10 to 15 minutes in advance, I'll be online for the next couple of hours answering your questions. So you might live in Karratha, you might want to know exactly what Karratha can experience, say, over the next few days, particularly when it comes to cyclones. General weather, we probably just guide you over to another site. But when it comes to a cyclone, you want to know, when will the wind start to get bad? Well, this is a perfect time to ask us. During that question and answer period, when will the wind get bad? And it's so when will we start to see the rain in, it might be Pardu. When will we start to see the rain in Pardu? When will we start to see the rain in Onslow or Barrow Island? Those sort of things that we can't answer in general updates, we can answer during a Q&A, and I can even, the good thing about the Q&A session is that I can actually post you some photos or images or model diagrams, things individually to show you what I'm talking about there. So folks, that's something that I'm pretty excited about, is to work with people and help people one-on-one understand weather a little better, and also work and help people understand one-on-one what sort of things that they might be able to experience from the tropical cyclone and when. Alright, so let's get into today's update. Just remember, this is just a prototype update. We will be completely revamping it and possibly moving things around and changing things and showing different diagrams and all sorts of things. But this is just an example of what you might expect. So guess what this is all, folks? This is all from a trough system that ended up annihilating Tropical Cyclone Jack. Jack was a Category 3 cyclone that was located well off the WA coast. We covered him in a few updates a while back. Now, that trough system has annihilated Jack, and what you're seeing here is some moisture that's been feeding through from that cyclone and from a nice moist northwesterly feed into this trough system, and we're actually getting some pretty decent rain echoes on radar here around the Pilbara, or the West Pilbara, and the Gascoyne region. Further to the north, we're almost in complete dry season mode up here towards Broome and the North Kimberley. You can see most of the rain over WA falling outside of the region that we cover, but the rain today you'll find is more than likely going to be a little bit further to the north towards that Pilbara-Gascoyne coastline. In terms of tropical cyclone threats, well, there's none there at the moment. Now, there is a weak low to the north of the Northern Territory, and that's going to move westwards over the next 5 to 7 days, possibly even longer period as well. Now, that low at this stage is going to be battling a lot of dry air, possibly even some wind shear by the time it gets out into the Timor Sea and off the North Kimberley coastline. We'll have a look at some of the track guidance forecasts on that, but at this stage, folks, it's unlikely to develop into a tropical cyclone and affect WA just yet, at least over the next 7 days or so. However, we can't rule it out if it stays over the top of water, and those water temperatures up there are at the moment are looking around the 28 to 32 degree mark, so they're really, really warm up here, folks. So you can't rule out any potential system that stays over water, at least at the surface, for very long out here. Eventually, conditions become right for it to develop, but at this stage, the model guidance is pretty intent on keeping it fairly weak, despite these temperatures of, as I said, 28 to mostly 30, 31 degrees in the area. So here's the tropical low we're talking about, the one just developing to the north of, or not really developing, it's just sort of sitting there at the north of the Northern Territory. It's going to push west over the next 5 or 6 days, and it's going to be located around about East Timor. Now, models just vary exactly where it's going to be positioned, so if it's going to be positioned in the Timor Sea, there is just a slight chance of it developing further as we head into early next week, and particularly middle next week. But up until then, it's going to be battling a lot of dry air on its track to the west. We see a very similar model progression here from the FIM model. Quite a similar track from the NavGem out here to the Timor, out here to East Timor. Probably a little bit further to the north though, which is going to limit any potential of it developing. Remember, the area around East Timor here is very mountainous, and so if there is a low-level circulation centre that's not really backed up by a mid-level circulation, and it's not really strong enough and deep enough, then the East Timor terrain will just tear it up. And the UK Met is a little bit more intent on developing something more significant here as it tracks towards Timor. But look at the latest UK Met. This is the one just before the latest one. The latest one suggesting less likely potential here. A lot more dry air than this particular model was showing. So let me show you what I mean by this dry air that's in the Timor region. So this is a snapshot of moisture levels right now along the Western Australian region and into the Timor Sea. We can see that the purple bits here are suggesting very dry conditions through the mid-levels of the atmosphere. The blue bits here are suggesting moist conditions, and it's no coincidence then that we're seeing a lot of that rainfall falling along the West Pilbara coastline in this narrow patch of moister air right in here. But unfortunately or fortunately, as this tropical low pushes further to the west here towards Timor, it's going to encounter some very, very dry air. And if we fast forward to day 5, and this is using the GFS model, which is normally quite intent on developing things pretty quickly, even the GFS model is going a little bit soft on wanting to form anything in here. You can see here's the low pressure region. It's going to be located right over the top of Timor at that time, so day 5 is next Wednesday morning. And what we see then is that this dry air all around the system it's basically just enveloping the circulation and trying to get right into the core of it, which is going to inhibit a lot of development of this particular system. The other thing that we need to always focus on around this time of year is also wind shear. However, we see that wind shear conditions overall are pretty good. Now, if the system starts to push further to the southwest, it will start to become impacted by shear. So its real only bet is to stay up north, and if it does that, it's unlikely to affect the mainland of WA. So if we look at upper level conditions at the time, around about day 5, remembering that the low pressure region is located somewhere in here by day 5, we see that overall it's a fairly light wind pattern in the upper levels of the atmosphere, but the overall resultant flow should be towards the west-southwest initially, and if it starts to gain latitude, so if it starts to get a little bit further to the south, those upper level winds will start to want to recurve it, and at the same time as they want to recurve it, they'll want to shear it away. So just be aware that just because it recurves does not necessarily mean it's going to recurve as a cyclone. It's more than likely by that stage just a weak low, and then if it does recurve, it's likely to become sheared away. But it is something that we'll need to monitor, because sometimes these winds in the upper levels of the atmosphere aren't as strong as they're expected to be, and sometimes things just happen not the way they're expected to. However, as I said, at this stage we can't see this hitting the coastline as a cyclone even in the long term, but there is a chance it will impact the Christmas Islands in the longer term, so we will need to focus on Christmas Island as we head towards next week and see what the system does. So as we look to rainfall for the rest of today around Western Australia, we've got this rain just hitting the West Pilbara coastline at the moment and the Gascoyne region. We're going to continue to see that for the rest of today. Tomorrow we're even going to see some moderate to heavy falls developing just off the coast at this stage, but some of the guidance is suggesting those moderate falls will continue well inland here on anywhere sort of west of about Onslow, or even Karratha could see some decent rain out of this. So hopefully, but particularly the Onslow area, could see some decent rain. As we head to Sunday, those conditions start to ease. The triggers that are creating that heavier rain start to ease, but we also start to see it push a little bit further to the east, and so Karratha by that stage should be getting some isolated showers, and also where the area particularly around Onslow is the focus of activity, and we can see here fairly clear idea here that it's a trough line, and we can see here northwest to southeast trajectory of that heavier rainfall as we see that moisture coming in from the tropics. By Monday, the trough weakens out, but by Monday also in the North Kimberley, we start to see an increase in isolated shower and storm activity, or development in isolated shower and storm activity. Some remaining very light lingering showers across WA. On Tuesday, we see that isolated shower and storm activity remaining fairly coastal in the North Kimberley. That's because of that low pressure system. Remember, that low is now expected to be moving towards Timor by the Tuesday. As we head to mid to late next week, though, we do start to see a lot of model variability. Some of the model guidance, as I said to you, suggests that low will start to push in a south and then southeast direction and head towards the coast, while other guidance is suggesting that it will continue out here in a west-southwesterly direction or completely die out over Timor. So that's why we're seeing a change or a big difference in what we're seeing in terms of rainfall figures around the Western Australian region. So the longer term rainfall potential for WA is certainly varied depending on which model guidance you believe and you trust. So at this stage, take all of these figures and results with a grain of salt here, because it does depend on the longer term movement and projection, and whether even that low is even still alive by mid to late next week, as to where this heavier rain will actually fall. So folks, I hope you've enjoyed the state-by-state video update, and just remembering this is only a first of, so we'll definitely fine-tune it as we head towards our new subscription period starting next season. Now, just remembering, of course, that in the subscription period, if you did subscribe to this, you would get this video update. Then we would have a Q&A session for an hour or two, so you could find out a little bit more detail about that rainfall around the Karratha, Onslow, and Exmouth region. So if you wanted to know more about that, or the low off the Northern Territory and what effects it might have on WA, that would be a perfect time to do it in that Q&A session that we would have after this video update. Anyway, thanks for watching today, and our next and last state-by-state update will be on the 30th of April, and then we're into dry season mode. Thanks for watching. See you later.